What's going on, everybody? Welcome to a special episode of the Ango Show Live. Today, we're talking about some WWE news. We got some big stuff to discuss. After the live stream, I'll put timestamps in the description down below. We're trying a different change for the format, and that's all this really is. Maybe you guys like live streams a little bit more. Maybe you guys like regular videos a little bit more. But just a couple things I want to talk to you guys about. Obviously, Endeavor bought the WWE, so we're going to talk about that. I'm going to relax your minds because everybody's panicking because Vince McMahon said, yeah, I might be involved in creative, but no, I might not be involved in creative. It's a really tricky situation. That's why we're going to talk about it today. There is some official news in regards to WWE's UFC merger, and I'll have the answers on that. We're also going to talk a little bit about WWE superstars requesting their release because it is officially confirmed through multiple sources at this point that WWE does have a couple stars who are looking to leave the company, which, to be honest with you, I know some people are going to hate this and they're going to say WWE dropped the ball on them, but it's okay if they leave. And the reality here is it's okay if a lot of people leave because there are going to be people losing their jobs with WWE and Endeavor's merger. Sale. Okay. And you know, the reality is, this is the reality. It happens in every business. It's not going to be any different with WWE. We've seen this happen with Tony Khan's television rights. With Discovery and Warner Media, they merge together, people lose their job. This is going to be a time period where I think WWE is going to be a lot less strict on keeping talent. I think if people don't want to be there, I think WWE will get to the point where they eventually say, screw it, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it. And if you don't want to be a part of it, you don't have to be a part of it. So a lot of people are talking about the main event, and a lot of people are talking specifically about Roman Reigns. And here's the reality, guys. The decision to have Roman Reigns win was not a last-minute decision. I also want to tell you guys, my opinion is that WWE has known for a very long time that they were going to be moving with Endeavor. I think they knew the writing was on the wall, and now they can officially talk about it. I think everything was strategically placed, with CNBC dropping the news yesterday that Endeavor was buying WWE to merge UFC and create a super company. If you don't think WWE has been actively working on making this happen with Vince McMahon in the background, guys, I think you're absolutely stupid for not thinking that, because here's the reality. Here's the reality. This is just the reality. WWE has found themselves in a situation when Vince McMahon got canceled and then came back, the narrative completely changed. Vince McMahon is just here to do the sale. And they were right about that. Nick Khan was not lying. People thought it was going to happen by the time of King and Queen of the Ring, but that wasn't the conversation, right? The conversation was WWE selling the company. Vince McMahon is back specifically for that. Sure enough, here you go. WWE, they have sold the company. Now, here is my point to all of this. The idea that WWE, and this is just how I see it, WWE has been talking a lot about creative. There has been a lot of public acknowledgement from WWE about who runs creative. In the last 8 months, people were saying, well, they were having Roman Reigns. They're picking Roman Reigns because of this, and they're doing this, and it's the story, and this is the story. Then all of a sudden, WWE sells the company, and the narrative then becomes, well, WWE just had Roman Reigns win because Endeavor's buying the company, and this and that. Guys, the reality is this. Vince McMahon has always been involved. Now, do I believe, and I'm just being honest with you guys, do I believe that Vince McMahon has been involved in the point where he has completely overtaken creative? No. I've said this since day one. I will say this until forever. I don't think Vince McMahon, despite everybody else saying it, I don't think Vince McMahon truly was head of creative. I don't think WWE has ever been in a situation where creative was completely overtaken by Vince. Now, does that mean WWE, because this is a real serious question, does that mean WWE has been lying to us in the sense that Triple H has said publicly that Vince gives a creative input and Vince and Triple H has the final say? Do I think they've been telling the truth on that? I do. In fact, I think Vince McMahon pretty much said it very clearly. This was something that's been publicly talked about. So Vince McMahon is not 100% saying that he's going to be head of creative, but he's saying he's not going to be involved. He's basically saying he's not going to be involved like he used to be, but he will have a little bit of work creatively. Now, for those who don't understand what's happening here, this is the reality with WWE. WWE has Triple H as chief content officer. He is head of creative, technically speaking. Okay? Triple H is announced, it's formally announced that Triple H will still be head of creative. But that's what WWE announced months ago. WWE announced this months ago. So clearly Triple H has been head of creative this entire time. We technically shouldn't worry. No, I believe that Vince McMahon has always had something to do with creative. Now, how strict is that? I don't know. I don't know how strict that is. But I think he's been involved. I don't think he's been involved 100% the way that you guys think he's been involved. I think certain decisions, certain storylines, certain plans are all Triple H. I think Vince McMahon gets to the point and says, hey, I don't want this person pushed. And I think Triple H has to say, I don't know. Hey, I appreciate your ideas, Vince. We're looking at numbers. We're looking at metrics. We're listening to the crowd. This person's getting pushed. Instead, it's just the way it is. I think Vince McMahon has involvement and will have involvement. But guess what, guys? Nick Khan, Ari Emanuel, Triple H, they're going to be, at the end of the day, they're going to be putting out what they believe is the greatest product in the world. So whether Triple H gets the job done, whether it's Nick Khan, it doesn't matter, because it's all going to come down to Ari Emanuel, who has to look at from Endeavor's perspective and say, UFC, WWE, they're struggling. UFC is not scripted. WWE is scripted. Triple H is struggling and he's not being good at creative. We're going to bring somebody else in. My point that I'm trying to make, guys, is that Triple H is running creative. That's it. But guess what? When you got billions and billions and billions of dollars on the line, it's not just Triple H. It's not just Bruce Pritchard. It's not just William Regal in the back. It's not just all of these people. There's a lot of people who, in my opinion, are going to be involved in the creative. Because guess what? If the company isn't successful, you got to point the fingers at somebody. You have to point the fingers at somebody. That's just how it is, unfortunately. So I think Vince McMahon kind of said it best. He said he would not be in the weeds like he was in the past. Do you guys understand how significant that is? I just want you guys to understand how significant it is when Vince McMahon says he's not going to be in the weeds like he was in the past. Pierre says, what I'm scared about, Ango, is that a few days ago, I made a video talking about how pay-per-views could be charged again. We might see pay-per-view prices. Guys, it's going to happen at one point. I think that's a very safe prediction, but we are far away from that happening. That's not going to happen right away. And when they do charge for pay-per-views, I don't think it's going to be every pay-per-view. I think they're going to have a different model. But yeah, Ari Emanuel is going to have to make his money back. Just so you guys know, this merger, by the way, puts UFC and WWE's value together at $21.9 billion. They will be a mega power, a superpower in the world of sports and entertainment. So right now, WWE is, this is a massive deal. There's no more guessing games as to who's running creative. There's no more guessing games as to who's running WWE. For months and months and months, wrestling media had told you Nick Khan was only back in the WWE to sell the company. Clearly that isn't true because he helped sell the company. Now Nick Khan is going to be doing the president. He's going to be the president of WWE. Triple H is going to be the chief content officer. He is the head of creative. Triple H is going to be running the show. He's going to be directing the show. Vince McMahon is going to be above all of them. But guess what? Vince McMahon is going to be above, he's going to be above Dana White. And then here's the crazy thing. Vince McMahon now has a boss to answer to. So if you guys think WWE's in the trash because of Vince McMahon saying, yeah, I might be involved. No, I'm not. Like he says the yes and no answer. If you think that right there is significant, I don't think so. Because Ari Emanuel's got tons of money on the line here. That's the thing. The reality is it comes down to money. WWE cannot bleed money for Ari Emanuel because they are going to sell the company. They will get away from the company. So the reality is here, I think they realized by creating a super group that they have to invest a lot of resources into WWE. And by them doing that, I want you to know one thing. I want you to know one thing with WWE doing this, because it's easy to be pessimistic. Pessimistic? Yeah. It's just so easy to be freaking negative about all this. It really is. But ultimately, I said this with Billy last night on the stream. If for the last 8 months, if WWE has given you everything that you've asked for out of WWE product creative, and then you found out it was actually Vince McMahon the entire time doing it, all to a T, every detail was crafted by Vince McMahon, you would not sit here and have an issue with Vince McMahon. Your issue would not be Vince McMahon at all. You would say, wow, I love the WWE. Right? You wouldn't care who was running it as long as you were happy. So there is a different perspective. There is somebody here that Vince McMahon now has to answer to. Will he be involved? Yes, he will. But Nick Khan is president. You think Nick Khan wants to lose his job if the company is sucking ass? You think, that's just a reality. That's just the reality. Do you think Nick Khan would want to keep his role? Do you think Ari Emanuel would want Nick Khan to be the president of WWE only to find out that the company's creative is leading to a downward spiral? No, it's different, man. When Vince McMahon was owning the WWE, when he was running the WWE, if the creative went down, Vince McMahon didn't really care because, he was still making money. I think it's pretty evident now. When people see the type of the shows that we've gotten for the last 9 months, I think when you take a look at that, I think it is very obvious that now that he has somebody to answer to, these people don't have any excuses. They cannot gamble with Ari Emanuel's money. Especially considering guys like Triple H were reportedly given a raise. I think the number was $5 million. I think let me see. Let me double check because I had it right here. Nick Khan will stay on as president of WWE and is set to receive a $10 million bonus once the deal is finalized. Chief Content Officer Paul Triple H Levesque and CFO Frank Riddick will each receive a $5 million bonus. Each side could cancel the agreement if one is not reached by January 2024, and WWE will disappear on the New York Stock Exchange instead of trading as TKO in the future. So just to give you an idea right now, this is where things change. This is where WWE is... I think WWE's in better hands than they were before. Now, again, I'm being optimistic, but I don't think this is going to be the same company we've been remotely looking at. I don't. And I mean that in a good way. Just remember, the outrage would exist regardless because of the fact that Disney was rumored to buy the WWE. So if you want to look at things positively, then you go into this WWE merger with the idea that it's going to be better for the product and for the fans, right? If you want to be negative about it, you just got to remind yourself that Disney was in the running and look at how that would have turned out to be. So I understand some people may not like this. Nobody's going to like the WWE sale regardless, but ultimately this is a scenario where WWE could be making the right move. They could be making the right move. This is a massive deal. We got a super chat from Celsius. Hey, Ango, the deal made UFC fans super, super salty. I read the comment section of a MMA Digest video and they were talking trash about WWE. Yeah, I'm sure they were upset. I'm sure they're bothered. I'm sure MMA fans are going to be bothered by the news of UFC and WWE merging because fans like to gatekeep things. I don't understand. Can I be honest? I don't understand how people could be so upset about WWE and UFC merging, literally considering the fact that WWE and the UFC are two of the greatest sports entertainment brands in the world. They are both incredibly popular. I'm not sure why people would be upset about that. We are not going to see Conor McGregor in the UFC fight against fight against Roman Reigns and the UFC. That's not happening. They're two separate companies. This is like Frito-Lay's and all the other companies that are below it. PepsiCo, all the companies below it. I mean, it's really not that complicated. Zachary dropped a super chat for $4.99. Everyone is either complaining the UFC bought WWE, but they would have complained if Disney or anyone else did. You can't fulfill everyone's expectations. And that right there is actually the issue, though. The issue is that UFC did not buy WWE. I don't think people understand how things went. UFC is a totally separate company that got bought out by a parent company called Endeavor. That parent company is now buying WWE to create one super brand. It's not going to be a massive change in the sense of, like, I don't expect Ari Emanuel to be like, well, let's call WWE and UFC the same company. Let's call it WWEFC. Like, that ain't happening, bro. I'd be absolutely shocked if that happened. So my point that I'm trying to make is people got to understand this is not UFC merging with WWE to the point where they're going to be one company and they're going to be doing shows together. I mean, guys, it's two separate brands. Nick Khan runs WWE. Dana White runs UFC. Maybe you do some cross promotion and stuff like that. But ultimately, that's all you would be doing. That's all you would be doing. So that's my point to all of this is that WWE doing this deal is just to create one super power. And again, you could look at it in a negative light. You can be bothered by it. You could be upset about it. But in my opinion, WWE, the way WWE has been in the last months, I feel like I think that was an eye-opener to absolutely everybody. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, I think Vince McMahon has always been involved. I think people being pulled off TV. I think certain people not making WrestleMania. I do think that has to do with Vince McMahon. I think so. That's not going to change. That's not going to change with Ari Emanuel running WWE. It's not going to be that way with Vince running the WWE, with Triple H and Bruce and all these people. You know, my biggest fear out of the WWE deal is just people losing their job, honestly, if you want to know the truth, because that's going to happen. I think that's going to happen. I see like the big thing that people are kind of confused about or scared about is the pay-per-views. I would not worry about pay-per-views. Do you guys think there's a significant reason? Like, I'm going to be real. I see so many people talking about pay-per-views and paying for pay-per-views. There's two things I want to mention to you guys. If you don't remember, Nick Khan previously mentioned the possibility of advertising on a ring and barricade, right? He talked about this before publicly. This was about a month ago or so. Then he said something the other day about WWE potentially one day looking at the paid pay-per-view structure. Obviously, the writing is on the wall. WWE and Endeavor have been in extensive talks for a while. I think they were foreshadowing things to come, and I think that's very clear. I do see WWE monetizing more like the UFC. And to be honest, I watch UFC pay-per-views, and every 2 minutes there's ads. There's ads everywhere. So when I watch WrestleMania, I'm not too bothered by it as a UFC fan because I'm used to it. They're going to try to make money in a million different ways. It's kind of the new norm. So with WWE having all these ads, with WWE potentially charging for pay-per-views again, I mean, it could be bad, it could be good. The reality is, we don't know until they necessarily do it. But obviously, WWE didn't just wake up one day and be like, we're going to sell to Endeavor. Obviously, whatever Vince McMahon's involvement was, it didn't just change at WrestleMania. Clearly, since WWE had gotten rid of Vince McMahon, clearly he's been involved in some capacity. But as of now, Triple H is still the head of creative. Nick Khan is still the president. This company is separate from UFC. Dana White runs the UFC. WWE is Nick Khan. It's really not that hard to figure out. There's going to be a lot of things that come from this. It could be good. It could be bad. But I look at this from the perspective of, well, Disney could have bought WWE, and Disney probably wouldn't keep this person or that person, and Disney would have had Mickey Mouse on television. I look at all those things. And when I see those things being brought up and things that I'm talking about or things that I'm thinking about, I just don't want to watch that. If Vince McMahon has been running WWE for the last 8 months and I've been enjoying WWE, I feel like then props to Vince. You know what I mean? I guess props to Vince because he got me to watch WWE at a time where I was not interested beforehand. So if Vince McMahon was running WWE and he did it and it was all him, good for him. Good for him. Thank you, Zachary. Thank you, Celsius, for the super chats. Appreciate it. Sean says the ads during the match on the ring and barricade is dumb. I get it, but it's dumb. AEW does it. AEW does it. UFC does it. ONE FC does it. Bellator does it. All these other companies do it. WWE doesn't do it. Guys, it's happening in the NBA. Go watch a basketball game in the NBA. They have ads on the court. I don't get this whole thing. Like I said, at one point, Nick Khan publicly talked about advertising on a ring, barricade, things like that. At one point, he talked about WWE potentially looking at charging for pay-per-views. Now, all of a sudden, WWE WrestleMania has 30 million ads all over it. And people are forgetting that this talk with Endeavor did not start at WrestleMania. This stuff has obviously been going on for a while. These were things that were being foreshadowed. Now, the only reason why I'm not bothered by it, it's because the reality is it's everywhere. You watch the NBA, there's advertisements on the court, right? You watch UFC, there's advertisements on the octagon and on the mat. You watch AEW, they do the same exact thing. Bellator, ONE FC, all these other companies, all these other organizations do the same thing. It's all about advertising. In fact, under Endeavor, because he has to make his money back, we're going to keep seeing that become the thing. They're going to keep doing that. Nick Khan was foreshadowing everything this entire time. The writing was on the wall. Endeavor was always buying the WWE. Triple H is the head of content, which means he's head of creative. Frank Riddick is still involved. Nick Khan is the president, and now Vince McMahon has somebody to answer to. So again, I just don't think this is a scenario where I'm going to be gloomy and depressed about it. I'm going to give it a fair shot. And I don't care if it's Vince, Triple H, Nick Khan, Ari Emanuel. I don't care if Dana White jumps on over from UFC to WWE and starts booking a show. As long as you create a good show, that's all I care about. That's all I care about as a fan. Just create a good show. I don't really care who's doing it. The good news is Triple H is still head of creative. The good news is Nick Khan, who has been responsible for big successes in the WWE, is still involved. I don't think we're going to see a lot of change. If anything, the change that we will see, I do expect to be more positive. At least I am hopeful. But it is better to me that this happens versus Disney buying the WWE. That's genuinely how I feel about it. William dropped a super chat for $5. JD said it. Vince sold to people who kept Vince in charge. Triple H head of creative? Yeah, right. I won't be shocked if Triple H gets a trash bag like Mickey James. You cannot give that opinion. Listen, William, I appreciate the super chat, but I want to make this clear. Because I do agree to a certain extent. However, what JD said is not anything that we don't know. We know that Vince has been involved. WWE has not been lying about that. They said it. They said Vince was involved in creative. They said that Triple H is the one who makes decisions. So here's the thing. We know this. We know it's public knowledge that Vince has been involved. Vince will still be involved. The thing that JD and nobody else is bringing up is the fact that Vince McMahon now has somebody to answer to. Vince McMahon is no longer bulletproof. Vince is no longer fucking bulletproof. I think that's great. There was somebody else who was trying to buy WWE, and it was reported that Vince McMahon would be head of creative. Vince McMahon would run the show. Vince McMahon would take the company private. There was all these things that were said about Vince. That's not the case here. WWE is now in a situation where Vince McMahon has a boss, and if the show sucks, whether it's Triple H, Nick Khan, Bruce Pritchard, William Regal, whether it's John Cena's fault, it don't matter. They're going to go back to Vince McMahon, and Vince McMahon is going to have to go to Nick Khan, and Nick Khan will have to go to Triple H and say, this isn't working. So there you go. I think that's logic. You got to think with logic. I do agree that Vince has been involved since day one. I've always said this. But Triple H is technically head of creative. Whatever Vince has whatever involvement he has, I think it's evident. But that's just the reality. That's the reality. Do I think Triple H made the decision to pull? Because I think this is an important question. Did Triple H make the decision to pull Bray Wyatt off WrestleMania? I think that was Triple H's decision. But we're going to find out with releases. We're going to see people get released, and the outrage will continue. So that's the reality is you got to remember there's going to be releases. People will lose their job and people will be outraged because they have to be mad about it. But ultimately, the writing's on the wall. This is how it happens. This is how it works. This is how it goes every single time. Thank you, William, for the super chat. I appreciate it. We got another $5 super chat from Chris Bacon Time. Do you think we see any change or acknowledgement on the sale tonight on WWE Raw? Also, I've been tuning in all Mania week. Your work's been amazing. Chris, thank you so much for the love. I think to a certain extent, WWE does acknowledge it. I mean, Vince McMahon tweeted it out. It's trending. It's the number one trend. WWE is making it very clear that this is You know, this is a big thing. I mean, I don't know, man. I think right now, WWE should acknowledge it. I think WWE should acknowledge it. I think WWE should have UFC personnel show up. I think Daniel Cormier and having people involved. I think a lot of things can happen. You know what I mean? I think a lot of things can happen due to the merger. So I think WWE doing it on TV would make the most sense. It would be something I would be happy for them to do it. Show people this is a new era. Give people some optimism, right? Anytime somebody sells, the first thing that people do is react poorly, and they don't acknowledge it, right? We know there's a sale. It's been announced. Guys, it's the first time. I don't think people realize how historic this is, but Vince McMahon, for the very first time, has sold WWE. I get why people feel the way that they do, because it's a weird thing. It's so weird. To me, I'm not scared, because at the end of the day, it's just television. I really don't give a shit. My money isn't on the line. As a YouTuber, because I've heard some people ask me, like, oh, as a YouTuber, how does this affect you? It doesn't. If WWE puts out a trash product, I'm going to call it trash. If WWE puts out a good product, I'm going to call it a good product, right? So I think those things are somewhat irrelevant to me. I think the best thing WWE should do is, hey, WWE has merged with UFC. We're creating a super brand, you know, and that's what I would do. I don't think WWE will do it, because technically you have to get the approval with the government and the stock exchange and all these different things. But I do think in some capacity, we do see WWE mention it, hopefully. I think it would be better for them to be optimistic. I'm going to tell you guys something, too, about the sale that makes me really excited. You know, just keep in mind, the UFC did a trade with another MMA organization. They did a talent trade. You know, these are things that under Vince McMahon would never happen. Now, Ari Emanuel has to make a decision. You know, if AEW want to trade talent, or if AEW want to work with WWE, all Ari Emanuel is looking at now is, does it make sense for WWE to do it? If it can make money, it doesn't really matter what Vince McMahon or Nick Khan or anybody says. If Ari Emanuel says, hey, this is what I want to do, then Ari Emanuel is the one who's going to get the job done, because he's at the head of the table. That's the reality. So Zachary leaves a super chat and says, can Vince get fired now with this merger? Anybody could get fired. Anybody can get fired. That's the reality. I think that's why I'm a little bit more optimistic. I think I'm a little bit more optimistic, because if Vince and WWE and Triple H and Nick Khan, if they're not getting the job done and WWE's losing money and they're bleeding money and Ari Emanuel is doing this, I think, in my opinion, I think Ari Emanuel's going to say, all right, we're done. Like, we're cutting you. Alex, please don't spam the chat, dude. Please don't spam the chat. I think there's a lot more possibilities as well, to be honest. Guys, there is some news about two WWE NXT superstars who have asked for their release. So as of right now, it's been reported by Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful that Zach Gibson and James Drake, you guys might remember them as part of the dyad. They were the grizzled young vets in NXT. They have requested their release with WWE. It's unclear as to why they've requested their release, but the belief is that they will address that shortly. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. They were part of this stupid faction, the Schism. And that's really all there is to it. So talent will probably be released. I think we'll see a lot of big changes. I think there's going to be a lot of things that happen. But just kind of keep that in mind. WWE have not formally accepted these release requests, but I do expect people to leave the company. And I'll keep you guys updated along the way. I don't want to stream too long. We've been at it for 30 minutes. We got a lot of content on the way today. But I do appreciate you guys for stopping by and watching today's stream. Thank you to everybody who dropped a super chat. Tonight's WWE Raw is going to be incredibly huge. So I'll be watching that, and I will be live post WWE as well, and we'll review everything. And as more details come out, I'll be here. I appreciate you guys for watching. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I'll see you guys later.